The country you're living in right now is likely not as safe as you think. And in this video, I'm going to share the safest countries in the world. And while I was taking a look into this research, a lot of these results are pretty surprising. For example, the United States is consistently in the lower percentile on a lot of these lists. And if you stick around to the end, I'll share some details on how you can actually find your country and see how it stacks up against the rest. Starting off, I want to preface that there's a lot of different ways to determine safety. And again, I'll explain the methodology used for this list and inside this video. And just want to say that there is really no perfect rating system out there. And the reason is a lot of countries have different data and different results and different types of reporting, meaning that they aren't all apples to apples reports. One report might be an apple versus an orange, and hopefully that makes sense to you, meaning that the data is a little complicated, but this is the best source out there, and I'll go ahead and explain a little bit more on how these sources are actually compiled. The source that I use is called the Global Organized Crime Index, or the GOCI. This index is compiled annually, and it gathers data from diverse indicators to measure the scale of organized crime worldwide, like the effectiveness of criminal justice system, strength of influence of criminal actors, and extent of criminal markets. It also utilizes a lot of other things like safety reports. It also includes things like crime, robberies, homicides, and all these other things that go into making a country safe or not safe. This isn't a perfect list, and there's a few different factors on the ways to actually interpret this, but this is just the best resource out there, and it seems to be a pretty international standard used when reporting on safety indexes around the world. Going through this list, I've actually been to every single country on the top 10, and I'm gonna break down each one, a little bit more details about it, and does it actually stack up as being an actual safe from my personal experience. So let's go ahead and dig into it right now. One of the safest countries in the world, which you've probably never heard of, is nestled between France and Spain. It's a tiny country located inside the beautiful mountains. It's a country where skiing and shopping thrive among breathtaking landscapes. The country I'm talking about is Andorra, which stands as the world safety leader with an index safety score of 85.9. Now, having been to Andorra and every country on this list, I'll go ahead and preface this that Andorra is essentially a tax haven country where it doesn't have a lot of full-time residents. For example, I went to visit Andorra in the off season, where typically the peak season is around skiing time, so let's say December and January. These months are going to have a lot more people inside the country, but if you go there during the summer, it's pretty desolate, and I can understand why it's such a safe place. It attracts ultra high net worth individuals who have businesses and want to structure it there. It's quite an expensive country, so there is a barrier to entry. And three, there just isn't a lot of people there. There's not a lot of people in the main cities or main towns. It's a really tiny population. When I was there, did I feel safe though? Absolutely, 100%. It felt safe because there was literally like an empty city. You would go 10, 20 minutes without seeing anybody else. And it was a very strange place to visit because we arrived on a Sunday and a lot of the places were closed on Monday and Tuesday. So there was only about 10% of the country actually open. Andorra absolutely stacks up, and I can see why it ranks number one, but there is some sort of methodology behind why it is such a safe country. One of the safest countries in the world is also home to the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, and it's a hub for luxury living and high-tech amenities. The United Arab Emirates offers a remarkable safety index of 84.4. Now, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and the UAE are pretty well known for being some of the safest countries in the world, but again, I've been there, let's just say, a handful of times, and overall I feel extremely safe every time. And you hear stories about people like leaving their supercars unlocked with the keys in the ignition, people leaving their $50,000 watch on the beach when they go to swim. Again, the rationale and reasoning behind why the UAE is so safe is essentially they have, again, an attraction of ultra high net worth individuals, meaning the majority of people are fairly wealthy in this country. The second aspect for why the UAE is so safe is because it is an extremely strict country. Again, you're not even allowed to bring a drone in there. There's a lot of rules and restrictions that, again, it's hard to argue with them, whether you agree with them or not. It does live up to making the country a fairly safe place to visit. Whether you're a tourist or living there, there is a sense of safety that people are almost scared to break laws because there is such strict punishment. Now, the UAE is an absolutely beautiful place to visit, and I can see why it ranks very high on this list. And again, traveling there, I've never felt safer than any other country, so I can see why this lives up to number 2 on the list. One of the safest countries in the world just recently hosted the World Cup, FIFA in 2022, and the country I'm talking about is Qatar. Qatar has some state-of-the-art infrastructure and delights people with a very high safety index of 84. Qatar Airlines is one of my favorite airlines in the world, and I love the airport in Doha. That's kind of where the positivity stops for me. I've spent, let's just say, multiple layovers where I actually spend multiple days in Doha. Comparing it to the UAE like Dubai or Abu Dhabi, there just isn't that much depth and things to do. And I think Qatar is realizing that they're starting to develop more actions and activities that are going to draw tourists. But in general, I felt fairly safe there when I would go out exploring. And again, it's a very similar concept to UAE. Super high net worth individuals, very wealthy locals, and again, extremely strict laws where people almost feel scared to break these laws, making it a very safe country. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's hard to say, but leave a comment below. There's a lot of pros and cons to all these countries on the list. But again, Qatar ranks number 3 for a number of different reasons. One of the safest countries in the world produces the world's number 1 leading amount of microchips, and the country I'm talking about is Taiwan. There might be some geopolitical instability when it comes to Taiwan, but in general, the day-to-day life puts Taiwan as the top safest country in the world, and it brings it to a safety index score of 82.8. Now, I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time in Taiwan, and again, I felt extremely safe there, going out at night, staying up late, partying, doing all this wild stuff. I honestly, again, it felt extremely safe everywhere I went. Even if you ventured out a little bit outside of the tourist or main areas, there was no problem there. Taiwan has another fairly strict policies when it comes to their government rules and restrictions, which again correlates to keeping the people safe. I think there's a lot of other elements that go into culture, laws, wealth, and other factors that go into safety. But in general, the day-to-day life in Taiwan felt extremely safe when I was there.
And guys, if you learned something new there, you're gonna love this next part. I've partnered up with Amazon's Audible to give you a free copy of my #1 best-selling book, Global Career: How to Work Anywhere and Travel Forever. Global Career has been featured in prestigious publications like Forbes, CNBC, Entrepreneur Magazine, and even Lonely Planet. And with over 500 positive reviews, this book has helped hundreds of thousands earn from anywhere. To get your free copy and start a 30-day free trial of Audible, all you have to do is visit globalcareerbook.com/audio today, or just scan the QR code on the screen here.
One of the safest countries in the world is also well renowned for its desert and landscape life and some beautiful beaches. The country I'm talking about is Oman. Oman scores high on the safety index, boasting a safety score of 81.8. I haven't had the pleasure of visiting Oman, but from what I've researched, it's very similar to the UAE, Qatar, and some of these other Middle Eastern countries where it has a very wealthy influx of oil, which keeps the country wealthy, high net worth individuals, and very strict laws. This all boasts down to a very safe score index. Now, I haven't had the pleasure of spending extended time in Oman, but if you have, leave a comment below. Did it live up to your safety expectations? Did you feel safe there? One of the safest countries in the world is also known for a very dangerous motorcycle race, and the country I'm talking about is the Isle of Man. Now, this is a very safe country, whether you're riding a motorcycle or not. It comes in with a safety score of 80.4. Another one of the safest countries of the world is distinguished by its iconic skyline and status as a bustling financial hub. The country I'm talking about is Hong Kong and has an impressive safety index of 78.4. Again, I felt fairly safe in Hong Kong. I would say overall, Taiwan felt a little bit safer, and I can see why it ranked a little bit lower. But in general, it was a very safe and pleasant experience to Hong Kong. Another one of the safest countries in the world, which is rich with history, known for its ancient monasteries and vibrant cultural scene, is Armenia, which offers a safety and tradition with a safety index of 77.8. Having lived here in Georgia and Tbilisi, I've had the pleasure of going to Armenia a number of different times. And again, I've never run into any sort of safety problems compared to, places in South America, Central America, or the United States, where I felt extremely unsafe. Places like Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, I can see why they rank a lot higher in the safety indexes. Visiting Yerevan and the surrounding areas, I felt fairly safe there. Nobody really seemed to bother us as tourists, and overall, everyone was very friendly. One of the safest countries and also one of the most popular cultures around the world is Japan. Japan is celebrated for its orderly society and the serene beauty of its cherry blossoms, and remains in the top with a safety index of 77.3. Having lived in Korea, I had the pleasure of visiting Japan numerous times and spending a lot of time exploring the country, and I can see why Japan is ranked so high. Again, they have a fairly good and stable economy, a really nice culture where respect is always at the top level. And this just trickles down to making it a fairly safe, orderly, and conductive country. When there's a rule, people follow the rules. It's as easy as that. And there's a culture of people making sure that that happens. So this is definitely something that I think stacks up. One of the safest countries in the world is also known as one of the strictest countries in the world. And it's a city famous for its strict laws and pristine streets. Singapore ranks high in the global safety index with a 77.0. Again, I've had the pleasure of visiting Singapore, and it definitely stacks up as an insanely safe place. And as you can see here, there's a trend. Fairly high net worth country, high net worth individuals, and fairly high employment status, good economy, and fairly strict laws and regulations that are extremely enforced. Now, in Singapore, there are some crazy rules and restrictions, like you can't have water on the subway. I was with my friends traveling on the metro, took out a water bottle, and it looked like I was holding something dangerous with the water bottle. I quickly put it away because I didn't know that this was forbidden in Singapore. But there are a lot of rules like this. You can't have food and drinks pretty much anywhere in public, it seems like, or any public area like the metro. So again, you can see the consensus here and consistency on what makes these countries safest. Do I agree that these are the best countries to live in with a safety score? Again, I think safety is a very important metric, but it's probably 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 metrics I consider when moving and living into a country. It's definitely high on top of the list, but it's not the only thing and the only factor that goes into it. If you want to figure out where the country you're living in ranks up, or just kind of see how all of this data stacks up, I'm going to leave a link below down in the description where you can find this. I use numbeo.com/crime/rankings_by_country to find all of this data. And I'll leave a link below where you can find out all of this. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from your firsthand experiences. Did you find these countries to actually be safe? Where have you gone where you felt the most unsafe? The majority of my travels after visiting over 100 countries, the majority of unsafety that I felt has been in the United States, Central America, and South America. Those 3 areas have felt the most dangerous, and I would say the next area would probably be somewhere in Africa. One thing to consider is a country has very different areas. There's going to be safer cities, and inside those cities, there's going to be much safer and more dangerous areas. Just to show you how to do this and how to look up, don't always read into these statistics as black and white. Talk to people who actually live there. They're going to be the best resource for how the safety is, because it's not always a straightforward flat curve. There's a lot of geopolitical instability. So 1 month it might be safe, the next year it might be unsafe. You really need to follow and talk to the locals to figure out what is going on in a country before you travel there, but more specifically in a city and what part of the city. Thanks guys. If you enjoyed this, I'll leave another video up here hand selected for you. And if it's your first time to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe.